Hey guys, Grounded Critic here, and today I got a little bit of a different video for you. Many of you guys have probably seen stuff for Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. I have been thinking about this game quite a bit in the last few days. Originally, I was going to post a video just explaining my thoughts on it, but my thoughts are that I don't like it. There's an infinite number of videos covering almost every issue I have with the game. So all I would be doing is just repeating things that everyone else has said, probably better than I would. So instead, what I'm going to do today is to give you an alternative idea of what the game could have been. Let me break down how this is going to work. When I was coming up with what I would have done with the game, I needed to establish some rules. So I couldn't just make it scrap the entire game and say, well, no, we're not going to even do Suicide Squad. We're going to make another Arkham Batman game. That would be cheating. It has to, at its core, hit the points that Rocksteady was trying to hit. So I came up with a couple rules. Rule 1, this game has to star the Suicide Squad. 2, the title of the game cannot be changed. The name of the game is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. As much as I do not like this as a core concept, we're gonna just see what we can do with it. Number 3, it has to be set in the Arkhamverse. There's a reason that Rocksteady put it in the Arkhamverse. It's a universe they created. It has built-in fans already, so they're definitely going to want to build off of that. So we're keeping this in the Arkhamverse as well. Number 4, it has to be multiplayer or 4-player co-op at the very least, because Warner Brothers for sure wanted everything to be online, multiplayer, get as many people playing this game as possible, so we're going to stick with that as well. So with the rules in place, let's get into the rest of the game. So first things first, let's talk about the characters that are going to show up in this game. Well, it's going to have the Suicide Squad, obviously. Those are the characters you play as. But we're going to, rather than have 4 characters that you play as, we're going to expand the roster to probably something like 12 characters. The reason for that is, first off, it gives players more choices. So if you have a larger roster, you can choose which characters you and your friends want to play as. Secondly, the title of the game is Suicide Squad. And if you only have 4 characters, like the current game that was released has, you know, because you and your friends are playing those characters, that none of them can die. There is literally zero tension. None of those characters have any chance of dying or getting horribly injured or anything because you and your friends are playing as them. Thus, they are for sure going to make it to the end of the game. The whole point is that they are sent on missions that are so dangerous that to go on them would be suicidal. And yet you have none of them die. So with an expanded roster and a larger team, there will be casualties. Characters that you don't play as, that you don't choose to play as in certain missions, are going to die. You can pick whatever 12 Suicide Squad members you want. Just as an example, I have a few here. You've got Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Copperhead, Bronze Tiger, Killer Frost, Peacemaker, KG Beast, Enchantress, Katana, Bloodsport, King Shark, Killer Croc. Those are a few options. Okay. So what is the gameplay, right? Let's talk about the gameplay a little bit. Well, first thing I thought is we're not doing weird tech shields that you have to shoot legs to regen the shield. Who programmed that stupid shield? Were they just playing Dead Space constantly and shoot the limbs, and then decided to put that into the shields? That's an insane mechanic, and it doesn't make any sense. Plus, this is the Arkhamverse, right? It's supposed to take place 5 years after Arkham Knight. Batman did not have any of these crazy tech shields, and his stuff was cutting edge, top of the line at that time. There is no way in the 5 years since that they should have this level of technology. It's just weird. I don't like it, and I don't think that they should be able to take on armies when Batman could die from like 5 bullets, right? That doesn't make any sense. So we would not do that in this game. The Suicide Squad would be able to die just as quickly or more so than Batman ever did in his games. I think that's the only way that it makes any kind of sense when you're putting it in the same universe. The other thing with the Arkham games is there was 2 ways to play. There was always 2 ways, right? And the first way was the stealth predator sections, right? And then the other way was just full-on hand-to-hand combat, taking out 50 guys. We would do the same thing. Why not keep that same kind of abilities, right? So for the stealth sections, rather than Arkham games, you could do something closer to Splinter Cell, right? You and your team working together, sneaking around places. The goal would be to sneak through, let's say, an army base, right? Like Waller sends them to an army base and they need to sneak through this base. You have two options. You can just go in guns blazing and just fight lots of guys, and it's a harder route that way, but it's an option. So you might want to pick more characters that are going to be that, if that's the way you're going to play. Or you go the more stealth route. You're sneaking through air ducts and hiding behind walls and sneaking around bases. But it gives you the options, right? And then for the hand-to-hand combat, it would be somewhere between the Arkham games and I think something like Uncharted, where you're running and gunning and you're doing hand-to-hand combat. It's third person. I think Uncharted is kind of where you would fall in the line. There might be some cover tactics, but it's not really a cover-based shooter so much as a, run and gun hand-to-hand combat. I think like Uncharted and Splinter Cell would be your two sides of the coin there with which way you want to play. That's how that works. Next thing would be mission selection. So rather than doing an open world of Metropolis, we would not be doing an open world. I think you could do an open world, but my pitch is going to be something a little bit different, right? And that's going to be that you are sent on missions to various locations, right? So when you're in the mission loading screen, so it would be semi-open worlds, right? It would be big missions. And I think the reason you do that is because, look, in order to do what they did in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, they had to give the Suicide Squad members powers and abilities to traverse the environment that they've never had in the comics, nor does that have anything to do with who they are. Since when does Harley Quinn uses a grapple gun and a drone? Deadshot's big thing is a rocket? Like, these are not who these characters are. These are ground level characters, and rather than trying to keep what you did with the Arkham games, go smaller, go more like Arkham Asylum, go into smaller, more curated environments. Like, let's go back to the army base as an example, right? So you could design then based around their stealth mechanics. Copperhead can climb walls. Like, you can design movement that makes sense for smaller environments that would fit with the characters without having to give them crazy new abilities and powers that have nothing to do with who they are. And I think that's much easier to do on a smaller scale, like level, than open world. So how does mission selection work? You're essentially playing as Waller for the mission selection elements, right? So you would have multiple missions going at the same time in the game. So let's say Waller needs 2 missions to happen at the same time. Someone's going to this base and someone's going to interrogate the Penguin or something, right? You as the player get to choose which party members you're sending to each mission. What that would allow is you're picking the characters that you and your friends are going to play as, and then you're sending NPCs to do another mission, and then based on how the mission goes, it could be scripted, it could be based on things that you choose, but some of those missions can go poorly, and some of the Suicide Squad can die. So you could potentially choose, like, well, I'm going to play as Harley Quinn this time, and I'll play as Deadshot next time. I'm going to play as Harley Quinn this time, and I'm going to send Deadshot off on this mission. Well, mission went terribly. Deadshot's gone now. While that kind of sucks, the reason I like it is because it's based on choices that you as the player made, and it's going to cause people to want to replay this game. It's going to add to the replay factor of the game. And a lot of the choices that I'm making in this are going to add to the replay factor, or you're just going to hate it, which I might be totally wrong here, and you guys are going to be like, this is the worst idea ever. And if that's so, just tell me. But let's get back into it. So let's talk about the plot. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Based on that title, we know that the main mission that the Suicide Squad are going to go on in this game is to kill the Justice League. Now, you have a lot of options of why Waller would send the Suicide Squad to kill the Justice League, but it doesn't need to be Brainiac. In fact, I'm really done with the Brainiac invasion plots. Multiple Superman games have had that as the main plot. Injustice 2, that was the main plot. DC Universe Online, which is still going on today, that was the main plot of that game, was Brainiac invades. What do we do? I'm sick of seeing Brainiac invade. There's so many other cool villains and characters in the DC Universe. Let's just stop using Brainiac over and over again. It's boring and I'm done with it. So, all we need then, if we're going to go that route of a villain controlling the Justice League, would be to find a villain that could fill that role. You got a couple options, right? Grodd could be really fun. I think that's might come across as a little corny or too much of a jump from the Arkham games to go right into, you know, gorillas, mind control gorillas taking over the Justice League. So my personal thought was to go with the White Martians. Now, there's a lot of reasons why White Martians are the perfect choice for this game. First off, they can look like anyone. They have telepathy, they have mind control powers. You could have full-scale invasions as the game goes on, but to start with, I would not be going with the full-scale invasion plotline. I think it's too big for the Suicide Squad to start with, right? We're not starting there. So I would start with a small team that has come to Earth to ready Earth for a coming invasion. And if this sounds kind of familiar, it's because it's roughly the start of Justice League from the cartoon. And the reason why that's great is because the Arkham games took so much inspiration from the Batman the Animated Series Bruce Timm universe. Why wouldn't you continue doing that when you're doing like the Justice League or the Suicide Squad? So we would keep the spirit of that alive, have a lot of those characters be, maybe you get some of the same voice cast back, just like they did with Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill. So we know the villains now are going to be the White Martians. We know the Justice League is going to get mind controlled, and we know that the Suicide Squad is going to eventually be sent after the Justice League. So how do we get there? In this universe, let's say we'll keep the 5 years after the Arkhamverse ended. That's fine. It's been about 5 years since Arkham Knight ended. About 1 year ago, the Justice League was formed. Some major event happened and the League came together to stop it, right? Batman is not part of the Justice League, at least not officially, and at least not in any way that anyone knows Batman's actually around and alive. The way Arkham Knight ended, he was mysterious. He's essentially become a specter, like the specter of Batman looms over Gotham and people are not sure if he's real or not. Let's keep that going, right? So you could have characters throughout the game reference that it was almost a year ago that the Justice League saved us all, and my brother was there and he swears he saw Batman. And then someone else is like, your brother's an idiot, Batman's been dead for years, what are you talking about? Like, the same kind of banter that we always got from people in the Arkham games. Let's keep that. Batman is not an official member of the League. He helped them out in this initial instance, but he's still on the DL. People aren't really sure whether or not he's alive or not. So we would keep that going. That was too big of a plot point at the end of Arkham Knight to just kind of ditch it. And I think that's stupid. So we would keep that. So how do you get introduced to the Suicide Squad? Well, I think you start with a prison transport, right? From Blackgate, because Arkham Asylum was destroyed after the first game. So instead, it starts at Blackgate prison. You're introduced to a lineup. Everyone's getting ready to be loaded onto a couple different trucks. So you pick your characters, and you and your friends, whatever characters you pick, end up in the same van, right? Why not have Black Mask in the van with you? Because a lot of the Arkham games just had Black Mask in there very briefly and kind of punked him a little bit. So why not? Let's bring him back again. He's being transferred. And maybe he's not a fan of your characters. And so you're ragging on him a little bit. And he's like, well, I'm not going to be in here forever, and when I get out, screw you guys, whatever. Eventually, there's the prison transport gets attacked. It's Black Mask's gang. They're getting him out. You guys get out. You start fighting guards and the police as they're arriving. Kind of think of like the beginning of Grand Theft Auto 5, right? And this is your introduction to the characters that you're playing, and it kind of shows you how the melee works, right? And of course, you don't have your weapons or anything, so that comes later. So you guys are fighting. Maybe you end up fighting Black Mask as he tries to get away, and he gets in his van or whatever, and he's taken off, and he's immediately stopped by the Flash. And the Flash shows up, and he was monitoring the transport, and he arrived, and your first fight in the intro is against the Flash, and he kicks the crap out of everyone. He takes on everyone that got out, and he beats you guys in seconds. And the reason you do this is to show how powerful going up against the Justice League is. You need to establish from the jump that as a player, that knowing that I'm going to eventually have to fight this guy, and there's almost no chance I'm going to win. This is a suicide mission. And of course, you don't have your weapons, and things will be leveled out better for you when you eventually do fight the Justice League. But in this instance, you really want to set up that you guys have no chance. And I think that's a great way to do it. Flash shows up, he stops everything in a couple seconds, and then the prison transport is completed. Turns out you're getting transported to Amanda Waller. You guys end up joining her. She sends you on a mission. Eventually, the Justice League are infiltrated by White Martians, and this is all happening away from the player's view. We don't know it's White Martians till well into the game, right? All of a sudden, it's on the news that the Justice League has just gone rogue. They're locking down cities, and they're attacking people, and they're destroying military encampments and, missile silos and stuff, right? Waller eventually ends up sending you, rather than taking you head on against the Justice League, you're sent to different places, different people. Like maybe you need to break into another prison and get someone out because he knows how to, create something you need. Maybe you get sent to another country's military base to get stuff from there. Maybe it's like Bialia or something. Anyway, so this is where you're sent on these quests, and it's to get items to take on the Justice League. Long story short, as the game progresses, about halfway through the game or so, you eventually come up against Batman. Batman is doing the detective side of things, right? He's trying to figure out why the Justice League is acting this way and what's been going on, but he also has plans on how to stop them in non-lethal ways. So you're, at this point in the game, given the option. Do you stick with Waller and go with her plans to kill the Justice League, or do you side with Batman? We'll say for story reasons he's able to jam Waller's explosives, and he gives the option that if you help him neutralize the Justice League rather than kill them, he will help you take out the bombs. Something like that. So you're given the choice as players, right? What this does is it sets up factions. A lot of these online games have multiple factions, right? World of Warcraft's a perfect example. You have Alliance or Horde. So this is the point in the game where now going forward, you're going to be choosing between which faction you're going to side with. Do you side with Batman's faction or do you side with Waller's faction? It shouldn't affect the missions and stuff because you're essentially going to do roughly the same missions for each side with some changes, right? Like if you side with Waller, she might send you to blackmail somebody, right? Like, I need this information. And so you go kidnap some guy, and then Waller shows up on a laptop and is like, look, give them the information you want or I'll do whatever, right? And then on the Batman side, rather than blackmailing somebody, so Batman would just have you interrogate them, right? So King Shark's like dangling someone off a building and threatening to drop him if he doesn't give the information. He's so excited that the information is given that he like looks at his friends and he's high-fiving, not realizing that he just dropped the guy. And then they're like, don't tell Batman. There's just so many fun things you could do that would be callbacks to the Arkham games and the way that he would interrogate people. And then like you could have other characters like trying to mimic Batman and the way that he would interrogate them and stuff. Like there's just so many fun things you could do with that. Long story short, you eventually fight the Justice League. You find out that the White Martians are behind it, and the end of the game would lead into just like in the Justice League cartoon, you would find Martian Manhunter and finding him and releasing him and him being like, the Justice League is still alive and I can help you find them, but the rest of them are coming. And then you would just like have like all the White Martian invasion would start, and that would be your seasons going forward, that you're fighting the White Martian invasion and trying to find the Justice League and where they are, things like that. That would set you up pretty well for stuff going forward. The other thing would be, so now that you have two factions, that's going to also give you reasons to replay and side with the other faction and see different movie clips, right? You would have at one point, if you sided with Amanda Waller, eventually you would end up fighting Batman, and it would be a really cool fight. If you sided with Batman, you would end up fighting Deathstroke. And that would be Deathstroke's return to the Arkhamverse, and like he gets to do all the crazy stuff. It would just up him like he should have been, that we just kind of dropped him in Arkham Knight and never did anything with him again. So it's really cool to bring him back, especially because he was recruited. Arkham Origins, at the end of Arkham Origins, he was recruited. One of the games ended with Waller recruiting Deathstroke, so it would be like a really cool surprise to bring Deathstroke in, that he was recruited by Waller and he's been doing missions. The other thing would be one of the things that you can really take advantage of when you're doing these squad games is that's players against the NPCs, but we also want to do some player versus player. So once you select your side, right? Let's say you're siding with Batman. You would then go on some missions that would be player versus player. And so let's say, again, let's use the army base as an example. So Batman sends you to this army base to get, let's say, kryptonite, right? And once you arrive, your comms get hacked, and it's Waller has sent her guys there at the same time to get kryptonite. Your squad going into one way and another squad going into another way, entering this building, and you always have the option to go stealth and not set off alarms and try to get to the thing first, or go full in and just be fighting everybody. And then you're fighting the NPCs as the army base is being raided, and then you're fighting the other players, and it can just get messy. And it could be really fun. It could be really fun tactically to decide, like, hey, I'm going to send Deadshot and Harley are going to go in stealth, and Killer Croc and KG Beast are going to go in guns blazing, right? And so you're fighting the other team, and maybe your characters get taken down, but you have the stealthy ones getting through, whatever. However, it just gives you options, right? It just gives you many things that you can choose to do. I think it'd be pretty cool. Then the other thing you could do is when you actually go up against the Justice League members, these would be, think again, World of Warcraft. If you're playing World of Warcraft and you get to like the end of a season, there's always like a big fight, and it doesn't matter which side you chose, whether it's like Horde or Alliance or whatever, you're ending up fighting the same villains, right? So why not do the same thing in this game and have your 4-person team and their 4-person team both going up against, let's say, the Flash, right? And so now it's 8 of you guys versus the Flash, and Waller and Batman have like a ceasefire at this time because they need to stop the Justice League member. You can't shoot the other team, right? Like your guns won't fire on them, whatever. So you're basically on the same team now, but you're working with players on another team that you don't know as well. And so it becomes like 8-person versus 1 NPC who's just crazy powerful. I think that could be really fun and really cool, and I think it would add a lot of interest to those boss fights that I don't feel like existed in the game that we got released. Some last things I'll say is another thing you could do that's interesting with the White Martian. Let's say you and your 3 friends who are playing together are going on a mission, right? And you have mission objectives. As you're playing, maybe someone on your team is being affected by a White Martian who's messing with their mind, right? So their mission objectives subtly change. So let's say you're going in stealth and you're trying not to set off any alarms and you're trying to get to a computer, right? His would show all the same stuff until you get towards that computer, right? And then maybe his objective has changed and it's press this button on the wall. And so he goes over and presses it, and now the alarms are going off. And so it's having your friends or you, because it's random, be subtly influenced mentally to see things that aren't there, or to act against your party accidentally to make things harder. And what's interesting about that is once you realize what's going on and that you're being affected mentally, it's going to cause you and your friends to work together more, right? Like you're going to be more paranoid about it and be like, look, I'm on my screen, it's saying I have to press this button. What is it? What are you seeing? And then he's like, no, I'm supposed to press this. And then you're trying to figure out who's seeing what's really there. It kind of forces everyone to come together and work more as a team, which would be really cool narratively as the team is coming together and working more cooperatively to force the players to do the same. I just think it would be easy to do, it would make sense narratively, and it could just be really cool, because the Arkham games always did stuff like that, where they would make you see things that weren't there, or, mess with your mind. Why not do the same and use a villain that could do that? And I think that would be a fun way to do it that would also could lead to a lot of fun interactions between players. So essentially that's my pitch for what Suicide Squad could have been. I know this video is a little longer than I probably wanted it to be or expected it to be, but I hope you liked it. And if you got this far in the video, then you're a crazy person, just like me, I guess. So thank you for that, and please consider liking and subscribing. And again, thanks for watching, and stay grounded.